Okay, Parsha's Lech Lecha. So it's very interesting. Rashi says that L'hadnascha l'tevascha means you're going for your benefit. Hashem tells Avraham, you go for your benefit, for what's good for you. So what's the test? Hashem tells you go for your test. It's going to be for your benefit. So number one, to recognize that things are for your benefit. I mean, the Torah tells us our very selves, everything for us, for Torah, is l'toiv lach, for good for you. How much do we struggle with realizing that every mitzvah we encounter is for our benefit? So really, that's in the Olam Habadik realm, that it's going to be Lecha and Netzach. Even in this world, the fact that a person serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the mitzvah, he's told what to do for Hashem. Again, if a person recognizes his mission, people want to do things for great people. They feel very proud of themselves, very good. Oh, look, I'm doing something, I'm accomplishing. And here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us it's for your benefit, l'toiv lach, and we struggle with it. So understanding itself, l'toiv lach, is really something that's also in the Soyin. But Avram Avinu, if Hashem tells him l'toiv lach, so of course, what's in the Soyin then? That could very well be what the Soyin is. Because Hashem tells Avram, la nascha, for your benefit. Avram Avinu says, I'm serving you, Hashem, for you. Hashem, Avram Avinu's whole life. The Vilna Gaon's famous ma'aseh with the Esrig. He finally got an esrog. They couldn't find an esrog. They got him an esrog, and they were very embarrassed to tell him that they had to pay the price, that the schar of the mitzvah should go to the person that sold the esrog. And they didn't know what to tell the Vilna Gaon. He was ecstatic. I can do the mitzvah pure, selflessness, only because Hashem said so, without me, any benefit of my own involved. Avram Avinu, he's here to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem said, do it for your benefit. My benefit. I'm doing it for you, Hashem. No. You have to have in mind your benefit. It's that itself to be able to have in mind, and that's what really, again, Avram is the Av. And Klal Yisrael as a Torah mitzvahs, if we realize that the mitzvahs that we're doing, of course we do Lishma, we want to do Lishma. But in the Lishma, the Toiv HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us is for ourselves, and to recognize that that itself is Toiv. Okay, that's one inyan. Now it's interesting also that the pasuk leads up. It's more difficult. You have to leave from your father's house, from your country. His father's house. What's the problem with leaving his father's house? His father tried to kill him. He's growing up. He gave him to Noah to destroy him. On the contrary, that's Avram. Avram recognizes Hakar Toiv. Toiv is good. I'm only here because of my father. If I care, the fact that I survived because of what my father did to me brings out the greater godless recognition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Look, I survived because of that too. The epitome of Hakar Toiv, recognizing the good, that's Avram. On the other hand, Lot, exact opposite. It's an amazing thing. Lot went with Avram. He became wealthy because of Avram. And what does he end up with? Sodom. Avram either saves Lot from Sodom, goes back to Sodom. When Sodom gets again destroyed next week, where's Lot? God. Ammon and Moav come from Lot. And what was their Torah's prohibition of marrying Ammon and Moav? Ammoniv lo Ammonis. But what's the Ammoniv and Moavi? Because, as Ramban says, no, of course, it's time. The genes are such that 500 years later, we don't want to take them into our families because they don't have a curse of Torah. They didn't come out to greet the Jewish people. But that's the Yisraelis of Avram Avinu's Hakar Toiv. Now, there's much to talk about the Parsha. I wanted to focus on one point which I heard amazing insight from Zelig Glover once. He said, when Avram Avinu comes to Paroi, so Paroi gives him Hagar. If you think about it, it's utterly amazing. I mean, Mutav, says Paroi, it's better that she should be a slave in Avram Avinu's house than queen somewhere else. Now you're talking about this lady, she's a princess growing up in royalty. Every girl dreams of being a princess, a queen. That's a natural dream, what they want. Paroi the guy understands and says, it's better. She should be in Avram's house as a slave, menial slave, she has to go work, than be royalty, that she should be every whim, every desire that she wants, and she'll live in a royal life. How did Paroi get that? Paroi met Avram Avinu one time. He saw the godless Avram Avinu, and the guy Paroi says, my daughter should be in his house as a slave. And boy, did she become a good slave, because in next week's Parsha, she schlepped out Yishmael as a strapping teenager. She put him on her shoulders, carried him out. How did she get such strength? She must have been a real slave. A real slave. Pari didn't send with her slaves to serve her when she's at Avram in his house. Why? Because he understood if he wants to get the ultimate, optimum influence from Avram, then you have to be totally subservient to Avram. That's it. Nothing of yourself there. And then she'll gain the most. From what? From being in the environment of Avram. Go understood the Paroi. Rather than be a queen elsewhere, let her be a queen. She'll visit Avram. The guy understood that when you see someone of real, then automatically it's something that's emes, the nature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's Tzelem Elokim that a person wants to crave to be Elokus too. So even the guy understood that. That does verstanden. And Lamaisa, she ended up, she talked to Malachim, conversation with Malachim, and he talked to Malach. Person would die. No, she's already used to seeing Avram Avinu's house. She ended up, Soif Davar, being Keturah. She was Ketores, Maaseh Noim Ketores. Deeds were good, like beautiful, like Torah. She just went to get her back to be the wife of Avram after Sarah's nifter. Paid off. But Lamaisa, you see the Gadlus. You see that when someone sees the MS so strongly, it can impact you. That's the Maila. That's the greatness of something that can be seen clear. Unfortunately, we have the Yitzhar that obscures our vision. A mashal. That's something to be understood. You know, we're living in Golus. We have the mentality of the Golus mentality that surrounds us. We had a great line. Rabbi Rabashka was in Detroit. He said that when he was in the jails, he never looked at the TV. What's a person do all day? He could be bored. He says, if I look at the TV, I'm going to start thinking the way the Goyim think. So I can't look at the TV. I have to be a Yid. In Agolus, much of our thoughts, even from people, are assimilated to the way people think of the world. The Mashal talked about this. A Shalmid was dancing in the rain. That's what dancing in the rain is pouring. So the Gemara says, Godly Yom HaKshamim, the greatest day of the world is when it rains. The biggest bracha to the world. We don't look at it that way. We look at it as dreary, bleak. Why? Because the radio man said in the weather, bad weather coming. Bad weather, rain. But automatically, we don't realize the subconscious part of our thinking process is now it's bad weather. So I think like a goy. Become thinking like that. I wanted to present something to one of the Jewish Torah magazines officially about the Golus that we're living in. It was 3 weeks. Mentioned the idea of a Golus and talked about how in one of the publications, there was a whole write-up about how President Trump won the last election. He gave the political landscape and how he maneuvered and whatever else he did, his political thinking of how he was able to accomplish what he did. And then he talks about the next election, so he's able also, in a way, he could probably cater to this group of people and this. He's giving a whole analysis how it's possible, and he writes that Trump could win the next elections. That's what he writes in this Torah, or officially Torah newspaper or magazine. There was not one word about God in the whole thing. Not that he won the elections, not that he could win the elections. It's all up to him, how he gets the political landscape. He can maneuver, he can do this. What happened to the Bnei Shalom? I know personally, I think I heard it from the reporter known as Turks. He did meet President Trump and he won after the elections, and he asked him, Mr. Trump, how did you win? And he says, God. The man understood. He's not a Ben Torah. He saw clearly it's Hashem. Nevertheless, in what we would call a Torah newspaper that I could read, bring it to my house and look at, what happened to Baruch Shalom's name? It's not mentioned there. Akiyozeh, in his fact that he won, in the fact that he could win, that's not under Kosh Baruch Hu's control. When we had the Hurricane Dorian, Bahamas, second day of Elul, anybody mention that Kosh Baruch Hu was involved in the hurricane at all? Ruach! Devarai, Isa Devarai, the sorrow, Isa Devarai. The tempest wind does have Kosh Baruch Hu's communication. Anybody talk about the fact? I read an article about the whole hurricane and to describe it all, but there was not one word about Kosh Baruch Hu involved in the whole thing. But we have to get the news. Everything's about Klal Yisrael. Everything's about the Bria. Everything's about Hashem. Second name, Elul was a wake up from Elul. Are we in tuned? Parai the guy, he saw Avram. It's better that his daughter Hagar should be in his environment. She'll become Avram Avinu's type of a person, connected to the Beit Shalayla. It's worth it. The guy understands the MS. It's worth doing it. And we, unfortunately, can live in this what we call environs. We're assimilated into the ways of the world's thinking without understanding that everything is Beit Shalayla. Everything. I was speaking to a Bacha. He tells me issues with his chavrusas. He made conditions. This, he had to get this chavrus and the other thing, and they had a whole lineup set up and everything. He comes back to yeshiva, and it didn't work out the way he made up with them. He was frustrated, upset. The first thing I asked him was, did you daven to Baruch Shem chavrusas too? Baruch Shem doesn't have anything to do with our chavrusas. In yeshiva, that's but not the chavrusa part. Why? That's also part of the world. I need to have a chavrusa. I need siyata d'shmaya. Part of it. Put Hashem in the picture. But it didn't work the way I thought. I was going to do this, I was going to do that. Then we're not living in the sense. We have to learn from Parai. Be by Avram Avinu, learn from his behavior, learn how he lives. And even the Hagar shall become a very happy slave. She'll become somebody who's enriched. She'll become somebody who becomes the wife of the Keturah, Avram Avinu. We can learn from this amazing, amazing understanding that the guy himself, when he sees the emes with such a clarity, understood that's worth giving up. What we would view as Eilam Hazeh. We don't want to give up Eilam Hazeh. We want to enjoy Eilam Hazeh. And Hashem gave us Eilam Hazeh to enjoy. But for the purpose of getting to the Eilam Haba, of the purpose of connecting to the Bari Eilam. And that's something that we have to learn from being Tamid of Shal Avram Avinu. We learn from Avram. Everything's about Kodesh Baruch Hu. When he had a guest at his house, he taught him. He taught him about the Bnei Shalom at the house. He said he wants to pay for the meal. He said, you benched, you paid for the meal. If you didn't bench, then you have to pay, because where's it coming from? But he taught you that the food, it's all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To review it, that when you have food at my table, to understand that it's coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I went to the store, picked up food. Is it the connection? Is it direct? Is my life directly involved in HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That's Avram Avinu. He opened up his doors, he taught about Hashem, and he lived Hashem. He lived at the table. I once heard about. And a man told me, he was talking about Hashem at his supper table. And one of his teenage sons was very uncomfortable. He says, Dad, we're not Bali Tshuva. We should be Bali Tshuva. We should talk. We should live. It's about the Baruch Shem is our life. There's not one thing in life that goes by without HaKadosh Baruch Hu running it and controlling it, understanding it, and then Advekus HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to come about through that. But they are wrong. That's what the Avos are. Sefer Yosha teaches us everything about what HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what Avram Avinu stood for. And Avram Avinu was a semel of Torah. Zaktan Netziv, Sivitz Hashem Vayera. Zaktan Netziv says that he was Davek HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his Havas Hashem, which was the Begeder of Limud Torah. He was learning Torah with him. And that's why when the guests came, Avram Avinu had to look up to see. It says that Vayar twice, because he had to see who these people were. Because if a person's learning Torah, he's not allowed to do another mitzvah if someone else can do the mitzvah. If no one else is going to do the mitzvah, he has to do the mitzvah. So since Avram Avinu was getting guests, so he has to understand and discern who they are. If they're just people off the street, so he can send his son to go greet them in. If they look like more dignified people, then it doesn't pass. It doesn't have that the proper dignity to honor them. It has to be someone more stature. He has to do it himself. I had to look twice, because this was a gather of Limud Torah, him and Hashem. And Netziv learns Avram Avinu was Torah. That's what he was. And Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one thing. Yisrael v'Raisa Kudsha B'Richa is Chadu. It's all one. And that's how we will learn Torah. We're connected by Hashem. When we become and emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have to come like that with him. That's our mission as B'nai Avram Yaakov, Sefer Yosha, that the others will teach us myself a similar banim. This is who we are as children. The person has to say, a person has to look and understand, when will my actions reach those, touch those of the others of Yaakov. That's our obligation. So we learn all about them. We understand from there, but let's learn from the Goy Parai that's worth giving up everything to have that growth in the person's ruchnius. And that's the tachlis. This is what our life is. And we can never give out the Gehatzlacha.